Hey folks, this is Ben Yussel. How's it going? As you can see, it's wee hours of the morning. Um, I'm going to have a weird sleeping schedule right now. Anyway, um, had a conversation with one of my roommates here, or my other main roommate I have right now here at my place. Apparently, my landlord, who's been increasingly more difficult to deal with, and not just due to old age. And of course, my landlord lives downstairs. Apparently, my landlord's been talking crap about me to my roommate. And everything that my roommate just said, um, it's kind of like you take the smallest little bit of whatever, just like just little irks and things, times a million at this point with COVID-19. None of it, and absolutely none of it would hold up in the court of law, of course, because I never really had, as I mentioned before, I never had a written, there was never a written contract. There was no rental agreement ever. It's just a verbal agreement. And so other than just paying my rent, not burning the place down, that sort of thing. And all the LDS rules, of course. Um, and just, obviously general household stuff that we all help out with. The man has nothing. And I've lived here for quite a while now. Of course, I've looked at other places to live, at least in the local area, but not a big move. Which, I don't know, it still might happen. I don't know. It's just that, anyway, it takes some planning, of course, that whole thing, but I'm just thinking to myself, there's a number of things that cross my mind. And this is the place I live at. When you're at home, you don't want home to be a chaotic place or a place where you don't feel, you don't want your very home to feel like it's not welcome. That's, for whatever reason. Inside my room here, at least, I feel welcome. But it's just that, yeah, like, this is just a matter of getting along with an elderly landlord. It's not a legal matter at all. And because it's the nature of what I'm dealing with, I'm realizing that due to this conversation I had with my roommate, I'm now realizing that this could affect future reference, because my elderly landlord doesn't know the difference between a dependable tenant and one that he just gets really annoyed with during COVID-19 because he has his own problems and he can't accept that they are indeed his own problems. Folks, the man does not take care of the house like he should. But it's, difficult for people in their 80s to do that, something like that anyway. But he should have been in an old folks home quite some time ago. No exaggeration at all. I'll explain all this and many other things to future whoever's I need to explain this to. It's ridiculous, man. The weird thing too is I've known people for years and years in the past where even though I've spent so much time with those people, they still did not understand who I really was. And I'm not a very complicated person. I'm actually a very simple person at heart. But my mind is complex. I'm thinking about very complex things. Because I'm an intelligent person. More so than most. And that's just the way I was from birth. That's the way I've always been. But I'm not complicated in terms of my desires and basic personality. That's not. No, I'm actually pretty simple that way. But if you guys have been following my videos, you should know what kind of person I am. If you've been watching a number of them at least for a while now. So after hearing all this stuff, and believe me, there was most of what I heard I'm not mentioning here. It really seemed petty to me. And it seemed like he was just getting fed up with me being here. My dad asked me to say, hey, maybe just ask him, hey, Blaine, do you want me to be here? I haven't asked him that question yet. And it's one of those things where I honestly don't think he really, despite his frustrations or whatever he said to my roommate, I don't really think he's made up his mind. Because if he was getting sick and tired of me, he would have kicked me out a long time ago. But he never did. And my roommate mentions it's because of the money that I'm paying him for rent. Folks, I don't understand this fully, but I'm assuming that the reason why we pay rent in the first place simply has to do with there's a certain amount of space that we occupy to live in. Right? If one can live for free, that's pretty great, especially if, well, right? There are best case situations for living. But most of us have to pay for the space that we live in. That just makes sense to me. But the question is, how much should we pay every month? Mortgages versus rent, whatever. So it's not a question. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning, because when you have rooms that are unoccupied and you own a house, that's potentially lost income you could have from renting the rooms out. But when you rent a room out, you have to, there's a right way of doing that, and there's a wrong way of doing that. Whole thing. Yeah. There's right ways of writing up contracts, and there's wrong ways of writing up contracts. It's kind of like it's a loss of trust. And to one extent or another, it's a loss of respect that I have to my landlord. For him to do this, to act this way, even though he's now rather old. Because I'm taking that into consideration as well. when someone gossips about you, or when someone is upset with you, but they're not able to resolve things to you. Well, let me take a step back here. When somebody this is how crazy the situation is in a way. When somebody is in some kind of supervisory with a job kind of deal, or a landlord, right? When somebody has some kind of seniority over you in some way, shape, or form, some kind of authority of some form, and they can't even communicate with you about where you stand, they have to go to someone else. And you hear from that other person what they're saying about you. I'm trying to imagine for a second how that would work at a retail job I've had, or office job, or something like that. That's what's considered very unprofessional. That's the definition of unprofessional. So let's just we're talking about paying rent. There's payment of fees. That definitely sounds professional to me. It's not like I'm living here for free. I think that rhymes, but there's an infinite number of things at this point that I can talk about. I've talked about in the past, but I'll talk about again, that are very wrong with the situation I'm in, living wise, have been for the last 3 or 4 years. And I thought it was all okay and fine and hunky dory because whatever I ever heard from my landlord, I just dismissed as, well, he's just grumpy. He's just getting old. I saw this a long time ago. And it's really not cool when you try to put your best foot forward every single day in your own place to get along with someone like this. When your every little behavior is scrutinized to death. I mean, how would that make you guys feel in your own place? Like everything. Everything. I don't smoke. I don't womanize. I don't even swear. You know, there are a lot of things I don't do that a lot of other people do. I don't do. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. These are things that you have to do to live in a place that's a LDS household. But on top of all this stuff, I have to. I'm not talking about just helping out with household stuff. I'm talking about if some jerkwad that did some repairs for Blaine didn't do something right, I'm actually of the opinion that he's going to put that on me, but he can't legally, of course, because my landlord doesn't. He doesn't. He doesn't feel comfortable being direct with people. That's the whole problem. He's never been direct with me about anything. Or at least it sounded like it was just something that he was annoyed with. Or even, he tried, like, there's things that fly and the things that don't fly. So I put my foot down in the past. Apparently he didn't like it, but I'm paying rent. But I mean, the man just doesn't, because it's one thing to be direct with people. It's another thing to be very aware of every situation you're in and know when to be direct and how. you know, I mean, there's just a lot of people skills that come into many of us with time that we can't always expect of everybody. But when you're a landlord, for crying out loud, the one thing a landlord should be is clear. Clear and clear expectations. All the time, never changing. No wishy-washiness, no uncertainty about anything. Right off the bat. If there were thousands upon thousands of things that were definitely not cool when I moved in, the man should have told me. And if he wasn't sure about them, he shouldn't be sure about them now. If they affect me living here. Otherwise, it's just, you know. This whole landlords living in the places that they rent out to, it just often doesn't work out because of this stuff. Landlords often don't live in the places they own, they rent out to. That's a rather, well, that's what most people think of when they think of renting out places. It's very vexing to me because I never know where I stand. And now my landlord is gossiping about me to my roommate. How would that make you guys feel? So if you're wondering why sometimes I don't put out more content that I like to put out, that's kind of one of the reasons why. It is what it is until I have a new place to live in. YouTube being what it is, I always hear garbage comments as well as some good ones. You guys have had some really awesome comments recently, so I appreciate it. Thumbs up to you guys. It's not easy being a musician. It's not easy being not very well off. I never really wanted to amass lots of money anyway. I know what I wanted in life, and I'll be very direct with it about that in the future. I'll be very direct with anybody about anything. But you're only, that's the thing, is you're direct when the more that you truly understand that what you're saying is right, that's where directness can come into play. But you have to have that conviction. And even if you have that conviction, it's maturity and understanding of other people that cause you to maybe temper that a little bit sometimes with listening to another person. But at this point, we're just talking about somebody who has this notion of what I'm like. And they're so old, or they're so far gone mentally at this point in a way. They can't even see the person right in front of their eyes. So somebody who's been taken advantage of by renters who know how to manipulate people. Believe me, folks, I understand this fairly well. I'll understand this better with time. This is not a morally bad thing. This is a matter of somebody who just has a certain kind of personality that can be taken advantage of. Yeah. Yep. I have that side to me, of course. If you guys have been following my videos for a while, you've probably seen that I do have a very trusting nature. Otherwise, why would I put out all these videos that go deep about what I think about all kinds of things? That right there should show you guys what kind of person I am. That I'm not especially private, but I can be also very private about. It just depends on what it is I'm talking about. Subject matter. So yeah, I don't know if I really feel comfortable here anymore. Again, as soon as something opens up, I'm out of here. That really work out okay. I don't need this reference. It's not something that, and I'll explain to whoever it is that's asking for reference from the place I'm at right now. I'll explain what exactly happened if I can't use it as a reference. It's as wishy-washy as anybody I've ever known. Politically, we call them flip-floppers. My landlord's worse than a flip-flopper. He doesn't know what the devil he wants. I don't know if he ever has. He's as non-committal as I've ever been on anything worse. But he's worked really hard. He's been very, very good worker. A lot of people that work really hard at retail work their whole lives. That's commendable. But yeah, just I don't know. That's just whatever. But yeah, I mean, like, you can't. When do you know that somebody's putting? When do you know that somebody's how do you know that different people are truly talking about things that are very real? How do you know when somebody is losing it versus being really just very, very aware, put it that way, of everything that's we're talking about? How do you know these things? Well, it has a great deal to do with how you're feeling when you're talking to somebody. It has a great deal to do with the intelligence that you see in their eyes, their behaviors, their mannerisms. And the older you get, the more you see this stuff. Again, intelligence is a very good thing for being a landlord. You need high intelligence. The more shrewdness you have about other people, the better. The more of a sixth sense you have about who to rent out to and who not to. It serves you very well, but, like, I'm sure there's dimension. I know there's dimension for that. There's also things that are just, again, there's the stuff that will hold them in court and things that won't. Like, I'm still asking myself the question: if a landlord ever kicks me out just because they can't stand me, which it's never happened before. But keep in mind, folks, this guy is over 80 years old now. Has taken not very good care of himself, at least as far as his diet. But yeah, I'm asking myself, can he just kick me out the very day he decides to? Just on a whim? He told me he wouldn't do that in the past. I don't even trust anything he says anymore. I don't know what the devil to believe after what I've heard. I don't know if he's gonna. Yeah, well, there's just no telling anything that he's gonna do. If this is what he's been saying to my roommate. But, it's very small of him to do that. Why would you do something like that? Now, these are things you just don't do. Why would my roommate need to know this stuff? Or why would my landlord talk to him about this stuff? What's there to be gained from that? That's another thing. It's like, wow. now that I know this stuff, my roommate's a saint. Now that I know all this stuff, my landlord just shot himself in the foot. So, yeah. Anyway, you guys take care. Catch you later.